We talked about a couple things. First one is average. The book describes average. It really doesn't give a definition, believe it or not. But I want you to think about, if you were telling me what average is, and it's different than if you're talking about if you're an average basketball player or average whatever, just means typical, I guess, in that kind. I guess an average does mean typical a little bit. Okay. But it means a couple other things that I want you to make sure you know. Anytime you are asked to make equal stacks, or to make any kind of equal groups, and I also want you to think about average anytime they ask you to find a number that is halfway between. Oops. Anytime you're asked to find a number that's halfway between two numbers, they are also asking you to find the average. If we think about average, mostly when we talk about grades, because your grades are averaged, which means, supposedly, that's the typical grade that you get because, it's somewhere in the middle of everything that you've done. Now, to find the average, what do you have to do? Anybody remember how to find average? Maggie?
You add them all the numbers up and then divide them by how many numbers you have.
Yep. Add all numbers and then divide by how many numbers you added. Okay, so for example, let's say you took 3 math quizzes. You got a 90 on one, an 80 on one, and a 100 on the third one. If you're looking to find your average, okay, you add those together, and there are 3 of them. You add them together, you end up with 270. And then since you added 3 numbers together, you take 270 and divide by 3, and you're going to end up with a 90, which would be your average score. That's one way to think about average, but also, anytime you're asked to make equal stacks or equal groups, for example, if you have one glass that's filled with 6 ounces of water, and you have a second glass that's filled with 2 ounces of water, and you have a third glass that's filled with, I don't know, 7 ounces. Okay, and the book asked you if you were trying to make all 3 of them by dumping one into the other and getting them all to be the same level, how many ounces would be in that? Well, that's the same thing as finding the average. You take 7 plus 6 plus 2, add all that together, which gives you have 15 total ounces, and you're dividing it up equally into 3 groups. That means 15 divided by 3. In each one would be 5 ounces. So basically, you would take an ounce away from here. You'd add 3 ounces here, and you would take 2 ounces away from there. It's finding equal groups. Or the third thing, or same thing if they did this. Let's say you've got a stack of, let's change colors. You've got a stack of 20 books, and then you have another stack of 25 books, and you have a third stack of 12 books. That can't be 12, can it? Oh, I could just make it more. You have a stack of 21 books, 22 books, and you have a fourth stack of let's see, 13 books, if you wanted to make equal stacks, 4 equal stacks, how many would be in each? That's the average. 22 plus 20 plus 25 plus 13. Oh wait, I didn't want that. Can I change a number? Sure I can. This was 11. 11 books. Which gives me 8, what's that, 78? 78 divided by 4 is, I guess that's still the word. It'd be 19 with the remainder of 2. How about we do add, what did I want this to be? Maybe 13 was right.
It was.
It was right. It was 80, sorry. If there was 13, then there'd be 20 books in each stack. Or, last problem here, if they ask you what number is halfway between 60 and 132, you are asked, that is finding the average of those two numbers. Which means you take 132, add 60 to it, and then what am I going to divide by? 192 divided in half, cut in half is going to be 96. Halfway between 60 and 32 is 96. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? I guess.
Wow.
Oh, by the way, also, just throw this down here back at the first page where we talked about average. We also call average, and I don't know why. Average is the same thing. It's also known as the mean. M-E-A-N, mean. If you're asked to give the mean of some numbers, it's the same thing as if you're asked to give the average of some numbers. Nothing to do with whether it's mean or not.